Okay, it looks like we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. So, the title of the live stream today is Gold Market Intervention Only Serves to Delay the Demise of the Fractional Reserve System. And yes, I've been following gold since '02 when I first bought some gold coins and having working in the financial markets at the time and following the bond markets and other markets for that matter, uh, I learned very quickly that the gold market is yeah, there's something strange about the gold market, and you get the some kinds of action uh, that are not random. They happen always at the same time and at the same day. So we're going to talk about that. We had, of course, a big like sell-off on Friday afternoon in gold and silver. And prior to the US markets opening, gold and silver were doing really well, of course. But one reason I want to talk about this is not to complain about the intervention, but to basically say that you shouldn't worry about it. I used to worry many years ago, but I've gone, I'm at the juncture where I'm immune to it. And if anything, if you can, it's probably a very good opportunity to keep stacking. Even though a lot of times when you get these kind of smashes, price smash, if you go to the dealer and try to buy gold or silver, you will learn that the price hasn't really changed that much or that the premium has gone up. And this happened back in '08. So, yeah, and it's not going to stop me, and nothing has changed. So, I'm going to say hello to everyone. Nashville Pastaman, thank you for your super chat. FDR took gold from $20 to 35. If Trump reprices 8,000, possibly it could even be more. It depends what kind of measure he's going to use. If he backs, for example, 40% of the US foreign debt, I think we're talking like $27,000 dollar gold. If he backs, let's say, 40% of M2, it's the same. So actually, the foreign debt, I think I've done some calculations here. Let me have a look. Uh, Let me have a look. I've written this down. Uh, by the way, if you are wondering about Rudy, we have some friends over for lunch today, and they're still here, and he wants to stay with them. So Rudy is betrayed us today. So, oh, here we go. I've got the numbers here. Um, so 12,000. Yeah. So if we back the foreign debt, which is around 8 trillion by 40%, we come to a number of around, I would say, let's say 24, 26,000 dollars. So we're going to have Clive joining us, and we might have another guest, a surprise guest. We'll see. So we've got Pablo Pina, Jay Spike, Dutch Libertarian, Idris Koban, Darren Smith, Native American is here. Ruby's 200 says 40,000 gold. RB is here. Quadman 72 is here. Hi, Quadman. Dutch Libertarian, Justin Taylor, Moonraker from North Carolina, Darren Smith, Lorna Mc, McO7 from Scotland. Good evening to you, Lorna. Chris Weinert. Yeah, Rudy is a table hog. He's lying under the dinner table next to yeah, at the feet of one of the guests that he likes. Maria Langley, I think they'll revalue gold at market price. Well, the question, back in 33 to 34, and I've got the diary of I forgot the name now. It's this lawyer who wrote a diary during the Great Depression. The price of gold was actually going up in the international market from 33 to 34, and it was already, yes, Roosevelt reset the price from $20.67 to 35, but the international price was very near 35. The question is, at what price will they reset? And yeah, it will be at the market price, but I think it's going to be a lot higher. It has to be because it won't work if they do it at a level that's too low. Mark Rice, I'm going to come to your question in a minute. We've got, I think we've got the surprise guest coming on, and that's Francis Hunt, the market sniper. A lot of you asked me to have you on, to have him on. Hi, Francis. Nice to see you. I think your volume is not on yet.
I hear you well.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
great, great. How are you doing? Nice to
Great.
see
Great
you
to be
again.
with you.
Yeah, and Clive is coming, should be coming soon. So there's a question here. Let's see. How is the LBMA handling the conversion to compliance with Basel III? Well, the LBMA itself doesn't do it. It's the bullion banks that do it. LBMA is only an association of the bullion banks. I don't think the bullion banks have a problem with that. I think maybe it's the US banks that are trying to comply with it. Francis, have you got a view on that question?
I don't. No, I'm under-equipped to respond on the minutiae of LBMA's
Yeah.
compliance, apart from just knowing what you all know and that they're running behind on delivery and all that chatter. I don't have specifics. No, I'm sorry, I can't be useful there.
Yeah, the BMA itself is not a bank. It's just an association of the bullion banks. But what I've heard is that maybe the American banks are gonna uh, in institute Basel III, and that's why the gold is going to the U.S. Have you got an opinion, Francis, on why why so much physical gold is going to the U.S.?
I think it's everything but what they're suggesting as the reason. As with everything, I suspect misinformation. So I'm die-hard cynic when it comes to matters surrounding bullion, particularly. We were told, oh, tariffs, you know, to escape tariffs. So I'll just debunk the whole tariff tag as all of that because it was just a spontaneous news-related issue. If it's a Basel III fully accepted reserve asset, which is in demand and climbing in value, and you have a debt market that's collapsed 50% in America over the last 3.5 years, the last thing you're going to do is make it expensive for people to bring bullion into your country. A, at the central banking institution and institutional level, B, even at a citizenry level, where at least inside your borders, you feel a whole bunch safer. And we've seen this with China. So it has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump's activity surrounding tariffs. I will point out a couple of other Trump activities and what I think is going on that will come back to giving my take on why. And that's pure speculation on my behalf. So it's not based on fact, it's based on what I'm observing anecdotally. He's apparently going to, he's negotiating aggressively for peace, which many people suspected with Ukraine. He's wanting to also negotiate with China and Russia a reduction in military spend of 50%. All of a sudden, trying to be this peace hero. Now, hey, as someone who's anti-warmongery, I'm all for that in principle. But what you get is political expediency, and you get people that are true peaceniks. And this is political expediency. In short, what's actually happening is the interest rate bill and the military industrial complex expenditure are the largest two things in America. And the interest rate bill has now surpassed the military industrial complex. But what is patently clear, just maintaining, that means keeping ammunition that expires refreshed. That means keeping F-35 fighter planes in the air, maintained, parts changed. These are things that do Mach, whatever. Keeping tanks rolling, various other, just the cost of maintaining, not adding, not new inventions, not new contracts with Lockheed Martin, etc., is huge. And we're seeing also another story, just bolt on that, a collapse in housing in and around Washington. So the status jobs are being hived off like nothing. This everything, and we start every economic question with, it's a debt-based collapse, Mario. Whoever I'm speaking to, the only thing that changes is the name. It's a debt-based collapse. And Yellen was kind of very much made some comments after me, the storm in stepping down quite recently, just before she was obviously let go as Treasury head. And it's time for emergency protocols, essentially was her statement in terms of where everything. And of course, there's 9 trillion, the largest wall ever overhanging, to be rolled this year before you've spent a cent, and you typically overspend double your income. So that's you, Mario, who's on 100 grand a year, spending 250,000 on a credit card bottomless overdraft every year, and has done so for a long time, and rolling those balances, getting ever more credit cards, and everybody then eventually running out of credit cards, and the interest payment on all that you've rolled in your excess expenditure all coming due. All now, and now you see these peace initiatives, there's reduced expenditure. Hey, let's just have world wars with peace shooters nowadays, instead of all this high-tech stuff that costs so much, and this war where I've got to keep up with you. So this is all about the truth of the matter, is this is about a debt-based collapse, and America having to cut its cloth according to a closer reality or reflection of that reality, because there are no buyers for the debt apart from self-monetization. Apart from, let me also just put in inverted commas, UK, Japan, Cayman Islands, Benelux, Belgium, the usual suspects that are proxies, suspected proxies. So if you're in a debt-based collapse and you have a guy talking peace and wanting military expenditure to go down and all of this, at the same time, you are having a mammoth need for physical gold to go with the usual special relationship friend, the United Kingdom, in that. I would imagine that there's a certain amount of people at the very high up levels that are taking possession, and the massive holes of rehypothecation are being revealed, and more than one are asking for possession. And by the time you get to hear the fullness of that narrative, it'll be too late. Everything physical will be taken. So that's my spitballing, which is very macro bullish for gold, even though short term, technically, I think we're going to have a tiny pullback. That would be my guess, because let's say another thing, as debt revalues downside. So there's this beautiful thing about Demartini. If what you suppress in one place sees an imbalance upwards somewhere else. So we've had a hyper-valued debt market that hasn't really had true price discovery, because we had lots of little routines like the petrodollar, the Saudis, the protection racket, nice little oil fields you got there, make sure you circulate the money, etc., etc. So as we get the true price discovery coming in debt and a much more jaded outlook. And I'll point out in the last 2 years, the shorts on TLT have absolutely rocketed. Paul Tudor Jones, our friend Druckenmiller, all come out recently on a call we made 4 years ago that debt is a busted flush, all super short now, positioning in it. So not only do they have the biggest wall to roll over, they've got their own speculating casino that they created right under them, all now gambling on their own destruction, bringing further price discovery and market pressure. And what are we then seeing is it ceases to be perceived as a reserve asset. What is the reserve asset of millennia? You're seeing a gold macro run. So as we start to see the down valuation of debt markets is the awakening of the full precious metals bull, because there's not many other reserve assets left in the room. All of them have shot themselves in the head. You're talking about a 40-year cycle that ended when we called it in 2020 August. It's over. You've lost. It's supposed to be stable, boring, low val, because it doesn't deliver the alpha of what is a hyper-valued stock market, the alternative. So you've got a hyper-valued stock market with MAGA statists getting high on the hog of debt money by government. That's where all the big contracts are coming. Amazon, server farms. This isn't everyday B2B and B2C stuff. This isn't everyone in America buying books on Amazon. This is defense contracts and everything. And my word is that whole status realm is going to have to cut its cloth on a far smaller sheet of material. And as a result, with that contracting, I would also be deeply concerned about the status Mag 7 long run, the hyper-valued stock market, which has been positioned as the only last reserve asset in the room. Remember, precious metals was taken out of what became the 60-40 portfolio, where previous to that creation of the 60-40, many people held 10, and some of the legacy Italian families are third gold, third property, third equity, still to this day. So that's my take. I think it's a scramble for the actual thing where possession is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah, and you mentioned, hi Clive, nice to see you.
Good evening, Mario.
You do you know Francis?
Yes, we have met.
Oh, yes, Francis. We've done an interview once, haven't we,
Good, good.
Francis?
Yes,
I
indeed.
Or
just
Good to
want
twice.
see you.
just wanted to comment on what Francis said. I was surprised as well. I saw Trump commenting about meeting up eventually with China and Russia and cutting their defense spending by half. And that's news to me because Trump campaigned, and I'm not saying that Trump hasn't done good things, but he campaigned in saying we're going to make our military even greater and stronger. So maybe maybe he's come on, the administration has come on and looked at the books of the Treasury, and it's 100 times worse than what Rachel from accounts found when she became chancellor, and they're panicking. And I think it's too late to do anything about it. What do you think, Clive?
Can I jump in before Clive responds? There's one other key bit I want to add in.
No problem.
Reagan won the Cold War on outspending the Soviet Union. He went up from 3% to 6%. They would have had to have gone from 30% of their GDP to 60%. So they won on financial might in overspend. And that's a key thing. Now you have the polar opposite, where Russia is less debt infested and America's asking for cuts. So it's a very interesting role reversal. And if I was China and Russia, I'd be standoffish a little bit because America's in a debt-based collapse. Sorry, and hand over to Clive.
Clive,
No,
can I just, there's someone here I haven't acknowledged yet. Thank you for the super chat. Old Dirty Bastard Garage. Thank you for it. He says, why does no one mention silver is listed as a tier one asset under Basel III? No one ever talks about this. I'm under the impression that it isn't. Maybe, Clive, you can chime in about that and also about what we were talking earlier.
So, silver being a Basel III asset, I haven't heard of that. I perhaps wasn't paying attention. Obviously, gold is. We'll talk about that later because I think that might be an influence of what's going on with the movement of gold from London to New York. But let's just address the question of war and military spending. I think every government on the planet would rather spend less on their military. It's, that as Francis said, the budget deficits are out of control and they've got to cut back wherever they can. And cutting back on the military would be, if they could halve the military budget, which Trump has suggested as a proposal, would be a good thing. But of course, I can't see that when he speaks to Russia or China saying, hey guys, why don't you cut your military spending, that they're going to take him very seriously.
Yeah, I was wondering as well, the Russians and the Chinese might say, well, we want to catch up with America and you want us to stop spending now. So yeah, that is a problem. And I wanted to show you, the viewers here and you, Francis, because you were saying that they're all the mainstream is saying that the Trump tariffs are leading to higher bullion price, and I think it's BS personally, and especially coming from the FT. So, what do you think, Clive, about that? Why do you think gold is moving physically from London? Not just London, but we saw that Korea closed its mint. What's your view on that, Clive?
Well, I listened to the LBMA conference. It might have been today, but it was with some journalists and not journalists, big pardon. It was with some experts on the gold market. There was a guy from HSBC there. There was a guy from the Bullion Vault there, and then there were two advisors to the LBMA, as well as the chief executive, whose name is Ruth Crowell. And they were asking questions about why this gold's moving. I think the consensus of opinion was that it was related to the tariffs, but I felt that fell a little bit on flat ears as far as I was concerned. It could be that the tariffs was the catalyst which started it off, but realistically speaking, I don't think they're going to put tariffs on gold and silver. I mean, it makes no sense. If you think about it, why do you put tariffs on something? You put tariffs on steel, for example, because another country is producing it artificially cheaply because it's subsidized by the government. They've got their exchange rate too low or they're subsidizing the production, and you want to even things up. So you put a tariff there. Or maybe you want to protect a nascent industry in your country, a brand new industry which is starting out, and you want to let it grow, and you don't want competition stopping it from growing. That's why you'd put tariffs. Now, gold, there's no the gold price is uniform around the world. There's no need to have a tariff on gold. Nobody's cheating on the gold price and offering it to America for cheaper. And secondly, it's not a nascent industry. The gold industry in America has been around since the 1700s. And even if you put tariffs, it's not going to increase the production of gold in America. It's not going to increase the smelting or the refining of gold in America. Nothing's going to change. So the only thing that putting tariffs on gold would do would be to increase the revenues for the United States if in fact gold is imported to the United States. But countries which would normally sell their gold to America have got plenty of other places to sell it to. Mexico, Canada, they'll say, well, okay, America, you don't want our gold, we'll sell it somewhere else. We'll get the same price for it. So realistically speaking, I don't think there's any merit whatsoever in putting tariffs on gold. So I don't think it's going to happen. That's my view. And so what could be going on, I think, is it could potentially be related to Basel III. Basel III is basically saying that gold is a tier one asset. In other words, it's the most liquid, most powerful, most beautiful asset you can hold as a bank. And American banks are adopting Basel III. So, I think that what they want to do, rather than get their hands on treasury bills, which are also tier one assets, they'd like to get their hands on some gold, which is even better than treasury. So, I think there could be a lot of buying going on from US institutions so they can hold more tier one assets in the form of gold. Seems to be a better asset than holding gold than treasuries. Up until now, they had no choice. They were holding treasuries, but why not gold now? So that could well be a factor. The other thing which I think might be going on, I don't know what Francis thinks about this, but we've had in the past several revaluations of gold by the US Treasury. One in 1934, where they took it from $20.67 to $35. Then again, twice. Twice in the 1970s, when they took it first from $35 to 38, and again from about 1973 or 74 from $38 to $42.22. Now, each time they did that, that created a profit for the US Treasury. i.e., it reduced their budget deficit. So, it wouldn't surprise me if they shove it up to, let's say, $3,000. That would create, what would that create? That would create $800 billion. Reduce it wouldn't get rid of the deficit, but it would certainly make a sizable dent. And then Trump could stand up and say, "Hey guys, look, I've gone into power. We've had this Doge thing. We've been cutting costs, and look, the deficit's much less than it was under Biden."
Yeah. And yeah, Francis, I've noticed that there's been a lot of talk here on X about an audit of Fort Knox. And why would that be important? Well, because there's a lot of suspicion that the gold isn't there anymore or has been leased out. And we saw the other day that Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, said they're going to monetize a lot of the Treasury's assets, especially liquid assets. And the only one I can think of is gold. So, yeah, what do you think about this talk of remonetizing, well, revaluing the gold? And if they were to what do you think, Francis? Because Rafi last week on the live stream, he said if they revalue the statutory price from 42.22 to like the, let's say 3,000, that would make the market price go up multiples because uh, right now it's 42 and 2,900. There's a huge difference. And yeah. So what do you think about all this?
Yeah, to the two questions, to the question of revaluation, I think it is a potential scenario cost, as we like to say. We can't say it's a forecast that I'm making, which is committing me personally, but it is definitely a scenario that could play out. And I wouldn't just do it to where the spot market is either. You've got to remember that the deficits and the over expenditure of all these nations are so vastly high. So if they were going to do that, to not have egg on their face and have to redo it again in a year's time, it wouldn't shock me that they actually take it beyond spot price. I think that's a possibility inside that scenario. So yes, they could take it to where it is now, 2.9, but they could also forward place 10,000, for example, or even larger, because the rate of burn, that the trajectory they are in debt is so extreme that you're talking 1 trillion every 100 days. You know, you burn up runway a hell of a fast. And it's stupid to have to do things like, you don't want an accelerated version of the debt ceiling that you're doing every 4 or 5 months. So even if they chronically cut down on expenditure, and that'll mean services, welfare, Medicaid, it'll all have to go under the chopping blade. There won't be anything that can be retained in its normal size. I personally think post-reset, America lives on 1/10 of the expenditure that it's doing now. And sounds outrageous, but you've got to bear that in mind. They're spending twice what they get in. They get about 52% in tax receipts. They've got huge capital gains receipts and other things that are based on assets that are hyper financialized. You've got a hyper overvalued stock market. You've got when all those consumers go through the asset reset, you've got escalating interest rates that can only larger go higher on account of the debt valuations going lower, given the degree of proliferation. Scarcity is value. Proliferation is commoditization. It means it becomes a everyday product. I joke about pink Crocs being printed and containers, loads of them. Who wants to buy? Eventually everybody who wants such an item has them, and everyone else wouldn't even take them for free. So that kind of where you ends up with debt, and we're in that hyper stage of that. So all their incomes is based on a vaporware, hyper expansive bubble everything. And actually, if the degree of tax take, I would imagine, will fall post a reset and a debt collapse. I would imagine hugely on account, and at the same time, unemployment benefits and everything will spike immensely just at the time you need it least, because you've got this huge burn. So I see the military being 1/10 of what it is today. I see deserts with F-35s in 10 years' time with all the copper wiring and silver stripped out of them. So that's my forward thinking. They can't sustain their military at this scale if once the financial game is up, and they can't sustain, they won't be able to sustain their expenditure on interest rates without a renegotiated deal or a full debt collapse. So America has got the hardest. You've got to remember how we had the sick man of Europe was the UK. And both of you with, I think, some degree of English national heritage, and I carry the passport, will remember probably the 60s and 70s we were of it. That was the friendliest, nicest done, one buddy to another buddy handing over of nation state currency of the globe. Good old imperialist Britain worked with it. They got the Marshall Plan for winning the war, all the debt, and America got to be the new, fresh, fit, young buck. And Europe, Britain was the sick man of Europe for decades. It wasn't helped by a Labour government and the 3-day week and lots of other history, so it's not all down to one thing. But that was a devastating period for the United Kingdom in terms of its scale. It went from actually owning half the world and being an absolute superpower with the strongest navy to being, fifth or sixth in the global economy leagues. And today I think it's slipping even further. So were America to go through the more hostile version of that without the friendly, people don't understand the living standards I personally see for Americans having the harshest fall. If you look at income distribution and population, you've got the small corner of the West on much higher income for doing things like services and a lot of fluff in there versus the average population. I see a great leveling across the globe. And the downdraft is harshest in the Western hemisphere, or the Commonwealth and Western nations. And it's going to be the most harsh on the current currency king, because they lose their hegemony, and you don't stop right sizing. It's like a company that's in a failing spiral. They do one set of cuts and then they have to do another and another, and it turns into a doom loop. The mood gets destroyed. The best talent starts leaving. You are talking about the gutting of a great nation, in my opinion. That's how severe this potentially could become. It's not a guarantee, but it's a forecast I see. And I say to people in the West, you need to contemplate leaving your place
Yeah.
of abode. So I've spoken for a bit, but that's quite an out there statement, but that's where I am at.
Clive, I want to ask you a question related to what Francis just said, but before, there's a super chat here. Thank you, Jock. If there was a gold reval, would that not cause massive inflation, increase in purchasing power in places like India, China, due to the public holdings? That's a good question because I was going to ask Clive. It's like a two-part question. The first one is what Francis is talking about the U.S. seems to me like what happened to the Soviet Union in the late 80s, early 90s. So my question, do you think that could happen to the US and the West? And second, what do you think a gold revaluation would do? Because when gold goes up massively, that means that your currency goes down. So just wanted to have your opinion on those 2 points.
Well, I have to say, I loved France's analogy of deserts full of fighter jets with all the copper wiring stripped out. I thought that was kind of like, reminded me of the movie called Mad Max. I couldn't stop thinking about that afterwards. Nice. But let's just talk about the revaluation of gold. Yeah, normally when gold goes up in price, it means there's a devaluation of the currency, and devaluation because the currency is going down against everything. But I think if they have a revaluation of gold as such, and then it merely is a revaluation upwards of gold, and the price of everything doesn't go up. Of course, we have natural inflation anyway because we got these huge budget deficits, so inflation will carry on. But if you double the price of gold, it doesn't mean that the price of everything on the planet doubles. In fact, in gold terms, the price of everything is half as much. I see Francis shaking his head there.
Yeah. No, 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 I agree.
Yeah, and I think that happened also in the 30s when FDR revalued from $20.67 to 35. Reading the diary, I forgot the guy's name now, his diary of the Great Depression. A lot of people were worried that revaluing the gold was going to cause inflation, and it didn't. I mean, the 30s, you had very low prices. So yeah, Clive, do you think? How likely do you think a collapse, Soviet-like collapse of the United States and the West is? I think already in Europe we're seeing the slow collapse.
Well, I think that Western civilization is on a slow decline. There are many advantages with democracy, but it also leads to a situation where you're paying so much attention to the people that you end up by destroying the currency. That's the direction of travel we're going in. And when you destroy the currency, you then have civil unrest and potentially conflicts with other countries around the world. So it doesn't feel very good in terms of the direction of travel at the moment. Will we get to the scary scenario that you described, Francis? We'll wait and see. I hope not, but it's not a good direction.
Francis, just wanted to ask you because the title of the live stream tonight, I always pick a title, even though we talk about different things, is Gold Market Intervention Only Serves to Delay the Demise of the Fractional Reserve System. And this is in relationship to what happened on Friday. It's like par for the course. A Friday afternoon, gold and silver were doing really well during the morning, and then all of a sudden they just dump. And I've been experiencing this for like over 20 years, so I'm immune to it, and I think it's a good opportunity to buy. Yeah, how do you see this? Is it just them trying to buy time, or is it more serious? Is there do you think the situation could be getting so bad uh, on the physical side for the bullion banks that they're really desperate?
Yeah, I have a number of thoughts that I'd love to share. First of all, I don't think we would get this amount of media integrity if it was the full-blown hypothecation crash that is all our gold stackers' fantasy when truth comes home to
Yeah.
roost. I don't think we would be hearing all of this news. I would imagine it would be totally misinformation. You'd hear that COMEX went down and they would blame Iran of a DDoS attack, or North Korea, choose your villain of sorts. And then the Shanghai exchange would continue to change and surge a great deal. Then you'd probably find out that people in the West were actually buying at a low amount and you were being denied the right to change, and they were doing an insider arbitrage between Shanghai and that. They were, buying gold at 2.9 and Shanghai was now trading 5,000, 6,000. I think, and then you'll find out that there was a hypothecation and a collapse. You'll be fed all sorts of other misdirect narratives rather than what we have. I've been quite shocked by the narratives that are actually telling you, and mainstream sources that are actually telling you that large flows of gold. And that's why I got suspicious for a localized high. And technically we had a localized high for wherever we turned post the 2.9 was going to be our local top. It turned out 2.940 on gold. And we think, let's be clear, I'm a macro bull. This is a timing matter for those that did leverage trade. We've been leveraged long since 2011 on an HVF setup and a bull flag target. We were also investment long that never gets sold. We've just taken off leverage on the running of 2.9. So I expected the usual not-for-profits mega slam down of silver on Friday because we were expecting the target on non-farm payrolls or Monday. And it turned out to be Monday that we ran the 2.9. So since then, we've been out of our leverage longs. So that's all a technical opinion. And it was amazing how, as we were approaching our target, all this uber bullish stuff was getting in there. And I could imagine a lot of retail people going, this is it, this is the collapse, and wailing in at this point. And it's usually a localized high and you get a degree of a pullback, I'm afraid. So I think you'll get a lot of misinformation when the real real hypothecation comes, you'll be told all sorts of other things. Might be a look this way instead of this way. There might be a war or some distraction and all forms of things while that happens. And then you'll just be told the market's shut. It's gotten limit up or whatever the case may be, but there was a technical glitch or some story. And then they'll just come out and say, we aren't trading it and the new value is X, or every citizen has to declare if they hold it, or there'll be a CBDC and a blockchain and you'll have to tokenize and declare that you own it. So they collect the information first, then they'll send you a capital gains tax bill, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to have a decision as to whether you own black off-system gold or online surveillance finance gold. I agreed with most of what Clive was saying. I think the fact that gold goes up is not going to change food prices. It's just going to acknowledge the fullness of fiat collapse generally, which has already occurred. But the only difference that they've been very clever with organizing is that there is a synchronized over-indebtedness. So you've not seen the relativity of currency collapses relative to sound money nations, because there are no sound money nations. So what you've actually had is everybody is unsound, and we just admit it. And then the gold goes to 10,000 and whatever. You'll still be paying your $5 for your liter of milk or whatever you pay. But there is going to be a second wave of inflation, in my opinion, though. Many of them will attribute that possibly to any gold revaluation if it were to occur. If it occurs after, then it won't be attributed. They're going to attribute it to Trump and tariffs. And by the way, when you flash the pink paper there, I'm not a fan of, I don't eat everything FT serves up without a bit of critical thinking. But I do actually agree that the tariffs are going to be inflationary in the initial instance, on the basis that the Chinese have counteracted Trump's tariffs. So Trump's putting on 10 on everything imported, which is largely Walmart and a lot of Amazon goods. So 10%. He's taking a tax take. Remember, they're short of tax and they're overspending. So they need to reduce the amount they borrow. So they need every steal they can get. So that's going to pass on increased costs to the American consumer. So Trump making this nationalist stand of, I'm going to put China in its place, is actually making the Walmart goods 10% more expensive. China reciprocating by tariffing American energy, its producers, if it's using a percentage of liquid natural gas from Houston or oil or WTI that's imported, by putting on a 10% on that, they're making the producer price inflation higher for the manufacturers. Now, they won't run on 100% American energy, but they might have 25%, 30%. They might be getting a lot from Russia. I would imagine that would be their biggest provider. But whatever they do use, that's going to be added in. So the producer price is going to go up. They're not going to want to compress their margins for Americans. And then you're going to have the American tax. So you actually have two governments making a cash flow take out of a production cycle where one is the biggest manufacturer and the other is the biggest consumer. And the end consumer is going to pay for both of those, depending on what degree they are. So it's certainly inflationary. And when you're in an environment where we have high on bankruptcies, we have the highest credit card delinquencies, we've got serious issue in subprime autos, you've got very poor disposable income generally in the States right now. You've got an escalating interest rate that means some people are locked into their houses based on the deal they got. They can't be sellers. Because they can't afford to buy anywhere else. They won't be able to afford the finance. All you need is an unemployment shakeout where they are forced to sell on account of loss of employment. And we are going to be right where we need to be for a full-blown recession stroke depression. So there's going to be first the inflationary effects, the disposable. Then you're going to get the collapse that will be very disinflationary in nature. So you might get that we might be not that far. And we refer to it as a sort of demand destroying event, which is the global bubble of everything and the beginning of the unraveling further of what we've seen in the bond markets, already 50% collapse in the last 4 years, which took the better part of 30 years to get up to, by the way. So that's my take on the tariffs and also on the reval story. I'm not sure if I answered everything you wanted me to.
No, you did, and we've got three super chats here that I need to look into. SK, thank you for the super chat. So this is a question here. So Clive, you might want to answer it. I'm going to answer it first, and then I'll let you answer it, Clive. Why are you telling us to buy gold if dollars stayed the same value as gold? Well, when you revalue the price of gold, let's say from 3,000 to 12,000, that means the dollar has gone down versus gold. I think what Francis and Clive have been saying is that the prices of other things might not go up as much as gold. So the reason why I'm keeping my gold and trying to buy gold and silver is that if this revaluation would happen, I would be able to buy a lot more things than the average person. That's why I think, and I'm not telling anyone to buy gold. I'm just giving my opinion. Clive, so can you?
Can I just make a super jump in comment and be rude again?
Yeah.
What you just said for yourself, Mario, will apply to all nations.
Yeah.
You're actually going to redraw the map of the wealth of nations when you have that reval moment. And I actually don't think America's as keen on that as, say, China or Russia would be, for the reasons we have suspicions about what they truly hold. Sorry, I just thought I'd leave that out there, because you're going to actually
Well,
say you become the richest guys in the room, and, well, let's hope we find our stuff. And let's go have a look at Fort Knox.
let's make no mistake. If America does revalue gold upwards, and I also agree with you, it would make sense for the Americans to revalue it to a higher price than the current price. And the reason for that, the higher the price, the bigger the profit they could book, reducing the deficit further. So if they could book it at today's price, they'd be making an 800 billion of profit to contribute towards that deficit. But if they booked it at double today's price, they'd be making 1.6 trillion, almost, not quite, but almost covering the entire deficit for the year in terms of booking the profit. So, but if they do revalue the gold, make no mistake, they won't be selling you any at that revalued price, but they'll be willing to buy unlimited amounts off you at that price. So what does that mean? It means that whatever the price they do revalue it at, that will be the new floor, which
Yeah,
means that gold, as you will have an automatic put option, gold will actually trade at a higher price than whatever they reset it to.
key
That's
point.
just the way maths works. Um, as Mario talked a little bit earlier about what happened on Friday with the gold price crashing, it happened sort of almost straight after we talked. You've said you've seen it before. I've seen it countless times. I call Fridays Smackdown Fridays because it happens all too often on a Friday. It's not every Friday, but often as you get into Friday towards the close, suddenly
Right.
some mysterious person or entity comes in and sells gold like there's no problem, no tomorrow. They're selling the futures, of course, and that's pushing down the spot price. And I can only say that my opinion is that it's someone who's trying to manipulate the price lower for the weekend so that we start the next week feeling bearish.
Yeah. Okay. We got another loads of super chats, and we got to answer them. And I'd like to thank all of you for the super chats. Chris Conman, uh, would you? He asked, would you be in favor of keeping the Federal Reserve as its original intended purpose when it passed in 19 I see Francis it passed in 1913 if Congress repealed the laws from the 1930s that give it the ability to print money out of thin air? Thanks. I'll let you answer this first, Francis, because I think you have a strong opinion on it.
I would not be for maintaining the Federal Reserve in any form. No, I think the privilege of being the private entity that gets given the privilege of borrowing money into existence on an ever expansionary interest-based financial system is an exorbitant, the ultimate exorbitant privilege. It is 10 casino licenses to infinity power. It is not something that should be awarded privately. It should be handled for the people. But the chances of that actually ever happening are absolutely zero, because there are entrenched interests with far too much power that will ensure some format of controlled issuance, which falls under the cartel or a cartel of form, will be continued to be maintained, because it's not in their interest that you ever get your own money. They must control it. That is the ultimate power of everything. It's the age-old saying, I care not who maketh the laws. if I control the issuance of money. You can decide which laws get enforced and on whom, and if you are the guy that has the boodle in the bank. So it should be torn down.
Yeah.
But that's an ideological answer that I see no hope of
Okay.
material.
Well, I'll give my view on that. I agree with everything Francis said, but I would also add that the Federal Reserve is a great deal as well for the private bankers because when they're in trouble, they socialize the losses, and when they do really well, they privatize it. That's what the one of the purposes of the Federal Reserve as well. What about you, Clive? What do you love
Well,
central bankers or not?
let's start with President Milei of Argentina said he was going to get rid of their central bank, and as far as I know, he's not done it.
No.
So from a practical point of view, I don't think it's possible, and I don't think they will get rid of it. Do I love them? I neither love them nor hate them. I mean, they do serve a purpose in times of severe crisis, and we have to reflect that many people, when we had the global financial crisis, were in fact had their savings saved for what it was worth by the central bank providing liquidity to the banking system at the time and facilitating the purchase in some cases of the banks. So
But Clive,
it
I had
has a
gold
positive
already.
negative.
I had gold already. I've
Yeah.
definitely saved.
No,
So
if you have gold, you don't have
yeah,
to care.
so that's why
So,
you have to have gold because you become your own central bank.
You
And
paid for it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
all paid for it. They proliferated
yeah,
money, which
yeah.
diluted your
no,
currency,
I
and you
agree.
now
Yeah.
in inflation. There was nothing done on your behalf. We all paid harshly
So,
for it
so
without getting the gains.
yeah.
We got the socialized costs. So I
You're
would,
you're right. You're right, Francis. Anybody who had any form of savings paid for it,
Oh
and
yeah.
those who had no savings paid for it through taxation.
and
Yeah.
inflation. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last president to win the war against central banks was Andrew Jackson. I think that was
Just
1835.
look at all the ones that were shot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We got another super chat. He's just thanking us. He says, "Indy, thank you." He says, "Thanks, Mario, Francis, and Clive." So that's nice. There's another one here, I think. Uh, where is it? Oh, yeah. This is from Australia, Grant Harding. Thank you, Grant. What is driving the revaluation of gold? The U.S. Treasury would be compelled to conduct an audit. They may not have enough to justify it. Well, I think it's one of the reasons, maybe, and I'm speculating why a lot of this gold is flowing back. I think a lot of the treasury gold might still be there, but a lot of it has been leased out. So they have to close the leases and repatriate the gold to have the audit. Uh, Francis?
I wouldn't trust any audits, even if they do an audit. The problem is they're in such a situation nowadays that there is seeing isn't believing anymore. Unfortunately, after a lot of what we're going, and we've seen the accounting Anderson and Enron and anything else. So to me, I think. I've pretty much made up my mind. That doesn't sound very democratic of me, but I don't. I think the curtain gets pulled back, and all ends of malfeasance and last-minute stripping of the walls of every last possible thing of value will have occurred, and people will be stunned and shocked by the hollowed-out shell that will be left. And I think for now, there's a lot of cloak and mirrors doing that. Any audit that said we've run through the vaults. Take it from me, I'm Joe Schmo accounting company. Every bar is there, and there's no claims on it, but the U.S. government. I would shake my head and still be in patent sense of disbelief. I actually had a funny idea, by the way, and this is just a clever sales pitch. If I was China, what I would do, just because of faith in the system. I would actually have one of these glass museums that is the central bank. You have this bulletproof thick glass, and I would actually stack all the gold where people could see it. And I would actually have people, like those toys, you get a thing and you can go grab something. People could enter a serial number and the gold could be picked up and you could pay a pound or a dollar. And if it was China, it would be whatever, 10 yuan or 100 yuan. And you could watch a particular bar being pulled, brought up, and scanned. And then you could see a XAU number of nines gold and actually make theater of it and actually make it here's the country's wealth. And come and see it. And when last it was picked up, when last it was scanned, how much was it for nines, etc. New bars are in. Watch people see it in, and you actually make it a show.
Yeah,
That's
Ifresa,
what
I
I
think
would do.
that's a
I would
good
actually make it a show, and I would show up every other nation because let's be frank, outside of that, there's no seeing and there's no believing.
yeah.
Ever again on this reserve asset. It's that important. And people's words are corruptible. I refer back to the previous statement of he who prints the money makes the rules. I would say only thing that beats that is who owns the gold. And I would have one key big old place, plenty of guards, everyone, and I'd make an absolute fanfare of it. And the people can come and test the nature of the nation's wealth on it. And it must be all unhypothecated, stacked, and accumulated. So they can actually watch it even growing and saying, well, we contributed to that. And I would make it literally a whole show. You can see it, and there it comes. There's your bar being pulled, and along it goes, and into the scanner it goes, and out it comes. And that's your report certified, and you get your certificate that bar number XYZ was tested by you. You paid your 100 yuan, and make fanfare, light, smoke, whatever you want. That's what I
I
would do.
think they're capable of that because I saw the other day a clip of this woman with her child in China, and they ordered something on their phone, and there's a drone that came 5 minutes later and delivered the lunch. So the Chinese are capable of doing that. Clive, um, what were we talking?
Oh, well, I'm laughing again. Every time you speak, Francis, all these images come into my head. What you were talking about, where they have this great fanfare show where they're showing off the gold bars,
Yeah.
reminds me of Oxford Street in the 1970s. If you would walk down Oxford Street, you'd see these sort of open shop fronts, which were actually called auction houses. They weren't actually auction houses, but you'd have a guy on a stage selling
Yes.
a camera for 10p or a gold watch for 5p. And, everyone had to have their hand in the air and we're all waving, wanting to get our thing. And then the sting would come right at the end when he'd tell everybody, I'm not telling you what's in this sealed package. It's only 20 quid, but it's worth a lot more than that. And everyone had their hand in there waving the £20 notes. And of course, you bought a pup.
Yeah.
So frankly, if they were showing off gold bars inside a glass cage, I wouldn't believe a word of it myself. I'd just say this is out to con us, and so yeah, it wouldn't work for me. But I like the way you described it.
Yeah.
Um, on the audit, you said, Mario, that they may have lent the gold out. Well, of course, the central banks are the lender of the last resort to the gold market. So when a participant in the gold market can't lay their hands on the gold at a certain moment in time, that's what the London bullion market will do. They will lend the gold. And what I've heard, and what is well known, is that the lease rate on borrowing gold in London now is at extreme levels. I don't know how high it is myself, but what I can tell you is that I've got a feeling for how high it is because I happen to own a derivative. It's they call it a turbo warrant on gold. And the way those things work, they're perpetual, but the strike price moves every day. And the issuer said when issued 5 or 6 years ago that the strike price would move upwards by an amount equal to 3% plus an interest rate, which would be almost nothing. But they have leeway to change that. They've just changed the interest rate to 15% annualized upwards. So
Wow.
that gives you a clue how the lease rates on gold are moving. It's obviously a lot higher than it was. And this was confirmed in the TV show or the show I saw with the LBA today. They were talking about the lease rates having gone through the roof, and so I think what's going on are those people who are having to borrow gold, and there are plenty of them out there because you can't get out of the London vaults anymore. They're being squeezed to get their hands on gold.
Yeah. So there's a few more super chats. Big Bush Ape, thank you. He says, so glad the market sniper is on and you, Clive, of course. Yeah. Very nice to have Francis, and it was uh, he came on short notice, so thank you, Francis. Nikki's poetry, thank you. He says, "Cancel the dollar, free the world, peace on earth, zero taxes." Well, technically, the dollar is a weight of silver, but I know what you mean. The Federal Reserve note, cancel it. Uh, Rosanna Schomer, thank you for your super chat. Plain Sight, thank you, Plain Sight. What about Canada that have no gold reserves? I'll let Francis answer that first about Canada.
So if we're talking still in our revaluation terms, all the nations that have no gold reserves will significantly be poorer, and their ability to borrow will be greatly reduced. And you'll actually overnight have a inverting of which are the wealthy nations and which aren't. What is quite interesting to bolt on to the question, so Canada would not be so well served by the policies of Trudeau, which won't surprise anybody, I'm sure. What is interesting is that America was very much into the financialization of everything and pro-dollar, which is king fiat, and gold was the king anti-fiat. And it's only since Trump has really come back have we seen this, oh, it's time to get into gold. It's almost as if we've watched 3 decades of China accumulating. We've watched the last 2 decades of Russia accumulating. You've even been watching Eastern European nations that fell under the communist USSR, the Cold War era type nations that are aggressively accumulating. You're talking about Hungary, Poland, and Poland set a target of 20% of their GDP, while there's some people that have done freedom of information requests of Europe as to whether there's a requirement for 4%. So even Europe has quietly, Western Europe has quietly been accumulating. And now it's taken until Trump and to realize that there is this asset that goes up when debt goes down. And you could have had it all along. You know, we've been listening to portfolio theory. You're supposed to have some of the smartest people in the room in Wall Street, in New York, sitting right there and the other side of the US island. And they've been watching their debt market collapse post the CV19 events, which we called as a macro technical analyst, a blow-off event, which is typical of all final endings. And there was no one else in the room saying that until literally in the last year and a half. And they could have been buying with all those low interest yield debt, a lot of gold and been accumulating on the quiet themselves. And they haven't. And suddenly Trump's woken up to resources and now wants to annex nations with resources, including Canada, Mexico, Greenland, and he wants the only gate across the you know the Atlantic to the Pacific in
Canada,
Panama.
Panama, yeah.
So suddenly we've gone to, hey, there's a whole world trade thing going on here, and we're holding all the wrong assets, and we need resources. It's almost like everybody suddenly woke up and thought commodity matters. You've been watching China secure rare earth metal minerals for years on end, and you have to ask, what was America doing during that period, and why wake up now? I mean, it's almost too late. It's almost like, hell, we're going the wrong way in this oil tanker. Someone hit a left, you know, and now we're suddenly spinning the wheel on this oil tanker. We're going to hit into the Antarctic ice. We were supposed to be going to, you know, Greenland. To me, it's bewildering, but I do feel it's too little too late. But they have to be seen to take the right actions. Otherwise, it looks like the controlled demolition it is. So they're trying to, I think, reduce expenditure, hence these 50% cuts in military and all of this. But it's way too little, way too late. This kind of action was needed 3 decades ago, and it would have taken a long, long time of tapering, and they wouldn't have had the hegemony and the might that they would have today, but they could have had a much softer landing. By continuing to pull the stick back and climbing higher, higher, the stall is coming from a much higher altitude and it'll be brutal. But I'm interested in everybody else's view. It's not going to be good for
Well,
Canada. They've sold all the valuable stuff.
so, the question was, Canada's got no gold. What happens when we have a revaluation? Well, I think the thing which happens is you issue everybody in Canada with a shovel so they can dig it up.
Yeah, they have a lot of natural resources. That's right. There's a super chat here from Look Up. What country does this OMA relocates to? I guess she's asking.
You,
Oh,
Francis.
yeah. Uh, Francis is the nomad, aren't you, Francis? Where do you think is the best place to relocate to right now?
So let's be clear, we're in a leper colony and everyone kissed the leper. So to join. So there is not one single nation that has been strongly sound money orientated. However, there are less bad, so there's degrees, and you're going to give up something. So everybody thinks this is something where there's a perfect answer. You know, I'm sitting in Cape Town, South Africa right now, but I prefer being in the BRICS nation and in the Southern Hemisphere for want of wars, more freedom of movement, less grid control, like compared to London, where you have biometric cameras taking pictures of your face and all of that stuff. So this gets into topic that is beyond the gold discussion. But I actually think the nations that many of the Westerners have previously looked down on, I hope not looked down on, but have seen as lesser nations, are going to end up better off. And having gold resources is not a bad start. It's not the only thing you want to look at, but you also want to look at positioning. Where's the future formation of capital going to be? We've written quite a lot about this. We think Singapore is the acceptable face of China for the rest of the world. We've got a massive macro technical setup on the Straits Index. But I wouldn't have wanted to be there for CV19 because they're pretty draconian and rule based. So there's pros and cons. So what part of your life do you want to have the best optionality on? If you want a financial soft landing, I won't say Singapore's 100% free of debt either. It's not. As I've said, there's no perfect solution. I just think capital formation is going to the likes of places of Dubai, the Arab Emirates there. I think you're going to see much more of it there and much more in Singapore. But it's going to be a staged process. And I eventually see the venture capital and all the seed capital and the notion that all the tech majors all came out of Californian garages and basements. I see that tapering out. And I see, Beijing companies listing in Singapore, Middle Eastern and Tel Aviv Jerusalem entities. I see this whole shift east. The gold's gone east, and with it goes the wealth, and with it goes everybody who feeds off the wealth, the venture capital system, the seeding of new corporations. And I just say it's a very tough time. And I love Americans as people, and I love visiting America. It's a beautiful country. I don't want to sound like but the downdraft that they face, we're at peak America looking down, and everybody else is not going to have as hard a fall, but it will be worldwide, nonetheless, because we're talking about a giant toppling over.
Uh, Dmitry Shmerkovich, thank you for your super chat. He's got a question, I think. Unfortunately, I still live in the United States. What steps would you suggest to take to protect the gold in my physical possession from the scenario Francis described? I'll let you answer that, Clive.
Well, you need to keep it in a place where nobody can find it. That's it. Um, the minute you start telling all your friends that you have it stashed around your house, and then when things get nasty and everybody needs the gold, you'll have people knocking at your door. So probably, I think the best thing is keep quiet about it.
Yeah, I agree. And Clive, any view on where to relocate? Yeah.
Well, I've lived here in Switzerland for nearly, well, around 50 odd years. Um, it's one of the most expensive countries in the world to live in. And if you want to come and arrive in Switzerland as a tax exile, you're going to be contributing about $250,000 to the government every year. That would be the tax exiles. But we obviously do have a lot of immigration in Switzerland, but it's very high quality immigration. The only people who can afford to get in here are those who are going to earn a lot of money in one way or another. So it is high quality, and because of that, it's a very safe country, broadly speaking. We have beautiful scenery, beautiful mountains. You can see behind me the view of Lauterbrunnen, which is in between the lakes. It's a mountain above the lakes in Switzerland near Interlaken. It's a clean country. The trains run on time. It has a rule of law, pretty much Anglo-Saxon law, the way we understand. Of course, it's civil law, but it's you know where you stand as far as the law is concerned. And for that reason, I think if I had a choice of moving somewhere, I'd stay where I am.
Yeah, no, I don't
You know,
blame.
I mean, I have a little boy. He's 8 years old, and I don't know how it is in other countries, but in his school, every child in the school, when they get to the age where they can have computers, every single one of them has his own computer in front of him for computer classes. Now, I don't suppose that's the case in many countries. I would imagine in many countries the children are sitting 4 or 5 of them around each computer. But think there's a lot going on here. And if you fall ill, you can get the treatment. And there's been at least 2 occasions where I've needed treatment in a hurry, and you could get it. I mean, on one occasion I was about to go on holiday the next day, and I had a terrible, terrible pain. I couldn't get in town to see a doctor, so I went to see a doctor locally. He said this was at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm leaving the next morning. He said, I think you've got a kidney stone. I rush you into, or you rush into the hospital in Neon. That's 5 minutes away. So I went in there. They said, no, you haven't got a kidney stone. You've got something else. And you need to take these pills. Go back to your doctor. By 6 p.m., I was back at the doctor. He prescribed the pill, took the pill. I was perfectly fine the next day. Oh, yes, he gave me a big injection in the bum. Don't know what it's for, but, but, all of that in the space of 3 hours. Tell me another country where you can get such rapid and good medical treatment in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, for me as well, I'm in the UK right now, and I love living here. I've been here since 1992. My wife is English, and it's still okay for me. But I do think about it. But at my age, you have to weigh the benefits. The NHS isn't a great system, but last year when I had a heart problem, and it was all done on the NHS, and they were great. So, and I was lucky that they did it really quickly. And I'm not saying I'm for socialist medicine, but it did work. So we got another super chat from Paul. Excellent Zoom chat. Thanks, guys. So we've got a couple of minutes to go. Maybe we should end with both of you, starting with Francis, saying, telling us, me and the viewers, what do you think is the most important thing in terms of because this is an economics channel, so in terms of safeguarding your financial health in the coming, let's say, year or two. Start with you, Francis.
I was just going to say, given Clive's treatments, I think we need pictures. Otherwise, it's like the gold in Fort Knox. We're not buying.
I'm not sending you a picture of my bum.
Jokes aside, what do you do? Save your financial wealth. Well, I think the people on this webinar most likely are doing quite a lot of the right things, I would hope, as account of listening to Mario and Clive a lot, who's, I think, giving them pretty good counsel, and keep stacking. I do have, but many people think it's just the purchase of gold that they need to do. And I really want to broaden this out a little bit. You're going to be faced with this is a deeply desperate, extractionary, totalitarianist situation that we are pivoting towards. And it's potentially going to get pretty desperate because everybody is way overinflated in terms of how they've been living versus how they should have been living if they were spending within their means. So what tends to happen with government that doesn't like shrinking government, remember, they vote every year to expand. So they hate the notion of cuts, and they're going to come and extract from you to reduce the degree that they have to lose their helpers, their aides, and their sidekicks and everything else. And that's going to lead to the most draconian of potential taxes, which we've already heard the likes of Yellen speak about, unrealized capital gains. I want to put that out there. You've also heard about real-time taxation, that you'll be put in a CBDC and it'll be taken as you earn, literally as a businessman, as you sell an item, potentially, and then you'll have to claim back if you had costs. So there's going to be all forms of overreach, I think, in terms of totalitarianism. So yes, invest in gold. Yes, have some silver with that too. You're going to probably face a fork in the road where you're going to be forced to declare and tokenize every asset you own. This is the goal of Larry Fink, of BlackRock, and many of these other, I call them corporate fascist quangos of the progressive surveillance technology grid that they're looking to establish. So by tokenizing, you would be then declaring, giving a serial number of every bar coin that you own. And then I wouldn't be surprised once they've gathered the information that various forms of taxation occur. I actually personally, and we have 3 circles in our logo, and one is the reset sniper. I think the end goal is a sort of globalized technological corporate communism. And that means everybody is a UBI serf. And actually, you're a problem if you're self-reliant. You're not somebody who's saving the government money. You're a problem because they don't have absolute control over you. You still have too many freedoms. I generate my own power. I collect my own water. I have multiple residences in different jurisdictions, and I have gold and silver, and I'm very fortunate. I don't own a cent for anything, cars, anything. But in that sense, I'm a problem to them because I turned down their medical interventions of 2020. I turned a lot of things down and I could refuse. And I don't think that's the way of the world. So this is a gold discussion, but I would like to warn everybody this goes beyond gold. You may be reaching a point where that you might have to make a decision to go beyond law because law may not be moral. The difference between morality and legality is going to get more broad than you've ever seen in your life. The right of a totalitarian state to know everything about me and what I own, I actually reject that. The biggest casualty of the last decade and where they're taking us is privacy. You have no privacy. They feel they are owed and have the right to everything. You have the Snowden revelations. You have Epstein, everything else. You see how the world runs. So what you really need to do is think, how am I going to cope with all these attack vectors? Because my fear for everybody here is they think they bought some gold and that's it. They done and dusted. Everyone else is a fool. They're going to be laughing like Larry. And trust me, these people game theory this whole thing through. They know their precious metals bugs. They know how we think, and they know how they're going to get us already. They have a plan for you, and that's not enough just to own precious metals. You need to play the jurisdictional game. You have to have multiple residencies, in my opinion, if you really want to win, and still expect to fail in many instances. I'm expecting to fail on 7, 8, maybe 9 out of 10. I'm hoping one of my key strands holds it all together with me. And you need almost to have wealth that's also dispersed in a similar way. So my challenge and my answer and response to everybody is, how reset ready are you truly? Owning gold is a great start. It's not the final solution. And you need to give thought to that. And that's what we specialize in all the time. Build wealth, capital protection once you've built it, and ensuring your long-term freedom in what's going to be an ever more aggressive totalitarian society.
Clive? Um,
Well, I think everybody should own some coins of the realm from where they live. So in America, that would be pre-1965 dimes. In Switzerland, these are the silver coins, pre-1967 silver coins. They look like the coins that are here in this country. And of course, in the UK, pre-1947 shillings and sixpences and florins. If you own those, people will recognize them in a crisis as being made of silver, because they'll know the coins of old, and those who don't will quickly figure it out. So, and of course, if you have those coins in silver, it'll be easy to buy your bread or your rice or your milk or your eggs. Whereas if you don't, it'll be much harder because people, bartering other things apart from precious metal coins will be very hard.
yeah, I agree, Clive. So I like to thank the viewers for your participation and all the super chats. I'd like to thank Francis and Clive for being on. And yeah, it was really great to have the two of you together. And it was a great idea from the viewers last week. You have to get Francis on. You've been on my channel, Francis. So yeah, it's always nice to have you. And Clive, thank you again. And yeah, I wish everyone a great week. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, I've ended the stream.